Hey everyone, I'm following up from the video that I just shared with you guys maybe a couple days ago, and it talks about ways to build a successful learning within the first 6 weeks of school. So I wanted to share with you guys how the end of that video turned into this video, which is the simple fact that I talked about the ways that Responsive Classroom has helped me, and then of course the two books that I frequently use to go back and forth on to understand how to help me understand my teacher language. Teacher language is something that is so important because a lot of teachers just have to find a way to connect with students in a positive way, and this is the most positive way that honestly I can tell you guys that has worked for me. So I wanted to share it with you guys because not everybody uses teacher language, and if you don't, this is a great opportunity to start. So with teacher language, there's 3 different categories. There's reinforcing language, there's reminding language, and then there's redirecting language. And so reinforcing language is just something that means that you are just like reinforcing it, you're reminding, as well as like, so basically I have examples written down of the reinforcing language, reminding language, and redirecting language. I'm going to start with reinforcing language because that's something that I typically try to do the most. So reinforcing language identifies and affirms specific positive behaviors, actions, or achievements, encouraging students to repeat those actions in the future. So it's more effective than a generic praise of like, oh, good job, because it highlights what the student did well. So some examples of that I want to share with you guys is like, I noticed how you included everyone in the conversation, right? So that you're building more positive input onto what the action is that you want them to repeat again or do again. So you followed the rule by taking turns by, or I see you listen carefully to the instructions. You remember to put your materials back where you found them. Great work staying focused during the activity. I really like how you used a descriptive sentence to grab my attention. So those are some things that you guys could, like do and say. So, like there's different parts of it, right? There's following instructions, examples. There's also like classroom behavior examples where you could say like, you were respectful of others when I was, meeting with a small group, and, like things like that. But like some other good ones is like, you remember to, you choose to, or you chose to. This helps. And then you can like also ask questions when it comes to reinforcing language, like what helped you? And then, things like that. You followed our rule of being respectful by making sure that that student had a pencil while I was working in a small group, or you worked hard to finish your work and get it completed. Just like little small stuff like that. Another good one to use is reminding language, and reminding language is something that comes in like verbal prompts, and it's like remember to raise your hand before speaking, or also nonverbal cues like hand signals. So another example of like using like you can use visual aids with these, like picture cards, or redirecting a child to a more specific appropriate activity, and just reminding like the behavioral aims to guide individuals towards like desired actions by offering gentle cues and prompts rather than just like relying on punishment. So like I would say, like when you direct prompts, you like remember to walk in the hallway, but also like, when you have questions that encourage reflection, what should you do before leaving the classroom? You're like asking, but giving like a reminder of what we should do walking in the hallway. And then like you can also review expectations, which is like, let's review the rules for using the art supplies. Or you can use the I language, which is like, I'm noticing that some of us are talking out of turn. Remember our rule about raising our hands. Nonverbal reminders are like the visual cues, which is like pointing to a visual schedule for those who, just like need a little more focus. And then proximity is like standing near a student who is starting to get off task. That's like a reminding language. And then hand gestures is like using a raised hand to signal a student to raise their hand. So if you see a student not raising their hand, you just raise your hand. And then tapping on a desk, which is a gentle reminder for a student to focus on their work. Some good reminding language pieces that I like using is think about what you should do, or what did we learn about classroom expectations. It's just like you're being straightforward, but you're also like reminding. So think about what you can do to get started on your work is another great sentence stem to get started. Redirecting language is basically a strategy that's used to guide individuals away from undesirable behaviors and more towards like the appropriate ones. So it involves just being clear, concise, and respectful with instructions that the direct person is to show the desired action. So this technique is often used in educational settings to manage student behaviors, but it can also be applied in other contexts like parenting or even some like customer service. But some examples of redirecting language is like to be very specific, direct and clear. Basically do your work now, or you can just be very direct, like do the alphabet worksheet now. And that is just like where you're getting to that point of like, okay, we've already been through the reinforcing language. We've already, tried to give a reminder. Now it's time to be in the redirect mode. Redirecting doesn't mean you're being like strict or stern or whatever. It just means that you're trying to, like hold them accountable for their actions of what's supposed to be done. So you can say like, stop and give state the desired behavior. Stop and get up, stop and get to work, stop and listen. And then of course, like the last sentence, stem of that for redirecting language could simply just be, you need to stop, you need to work, you need to listen, or you need to complete the worksheet, or you need to go to your seat. You're just being very forward and straight, and you're stating the desired behavior that you're wanting. So these are really great things to have in the classroom because you don't want to get burnt out. You don't want to get frustrated. You want to simply just give a redirection. And that's like, there's nothing wrong with that. Instead of like saying don't run, you could instead saying walk please, right? You're giving that stated desired behavior that you're wanting. Instead of saying like stop talking, you could just say please use quiet voices when you talk. Or if you say blocks are for building, please build with them, instead of saying don't hit your friend. Or use gentle hands instead of saying why aren't you working. Those are just the examples of that. And like I said, this is something that I've, loved having like a copy of. So what I do is I simply just take this and I make this into like the size of a lanyard, or even if it'll fit into or on a index card, and like laminate that and then hole punch it and put it on my lanyard. I do that. Or if I like carry around something with me, I'll put it in there. You also would benefit from like blowing this up and then putting it on, like printing it off on 8x11 paper and putting it in areas that you typically will be at in order to go back and reflect on that. So this little right here, if you guys want to take a screenshot of it so that you guys can type it up yourself, these are really, really great teacher language pieces that you should incorporate into the classroom this year if you haven't already. And if you have, definitely leave some down below of what are your favorite ones that you guys use on the normal, because clearly getting through the year with the first 6 weeks, it's going to be a challenge. But at the same time, once you get the routines and the day-to-days, going, and you get your teacher language in and the 6 weeks up came around, it's time probably to start testing those students. And then you get to see where they stand and then how you can just jump in from there. And of course, to show like what other pieces you really need to use as far as to teacher language when working with the kids. So comment down below if you guys do teacher language in your city or your county school. If you do, thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you guys in another vlog.